All right, we will get going. Welcome everybody to our emergency town hall about what we can all do about Roe and what's likely to come down the pike over the next few years. I'm Greg Dale, TFC's CEO, and joined up here on the virtual stage by Amanda, our head of operations, and Lauren, our head of marketing. In about 15 minutes, Anna Eskamani, representative from the Orlando area and a reproductive rights advocate, will join us to talk about her view on what happened and what's possible to do. But I wanted to go through kind of some basic numbers and history about how this all happened, at least from a legislative perspective, and talk about how different avenues for action, how we work. If you're a veteran of these calls, I do apologize if there's some things you've heard before, but since there's a lot of new faces over the past few months, we thought it was really important to kind of start from the basics and work our way up. So as we get into it, kind of the basics of what you might have seen if you do some deep reading on this, how we got here, is really about this one number. Democrats, it was actually without exaggeration, a conniving plot by Karl Rove to take advantage of the lower budgets and lower recognition of state legislative elections and the immense power they hold back in the mid 2000s during the W. Bush administration. And the short answer, or the short TLDR, is that it worked. Democrats lost 1,000 seats at the state legislative level from 09 to 17. That was one full redistricting cycle, which led into the one that we're in now. We lost control of 39 chambers at the state level and only gained back about a fifth by 2020. So that's even with the blue wave of 18. The gerrymandering was so powerful, and some of the biases in the maps are so powerful that even with the blue wave happening in the 17, 18, 19, and 20 cycles, still only came back about a fifth of those chambers. So the GOP has taken the advantage here, and it's become paired with the increasing extremism that's found in our politics, especially on the Republican side. The Republicans that are winning primaries in state houses and state senates are the sort of folks that are from the, I'm not even exaggerating, like QAnon mold, the Fox News fever dream, people who vote in these small elections, which is why they're so below the radar, have become, you really have to drive up the diehards. And so who are the diehards these days? It's really moved really far to the right. And so because of that, the net effect of the people that control these chambers is a lot of extremism across a lot of different topics. So whether it's reproductive health and access to abortion, we have 9 states having flat out banned abortion. 17 states that are, certain are in process of passing severe restrictions. And Michelle, there are 75 people here, which is awesome. Voter suppression, election integrity. We have literal election deniers running for governors of Michigan and Pennsylvania. Michigan Secretary of State doesn't believe that the election in 2020 was valid. And the gerrymandering, that is a dry but really, really important topic that enables all of this to happen. So obviously at the same time, there's been a long-term legal strategy in the judiciary that happened to actually change the composition of the Supreme Court and the 2016 presidential election. But as these rights get passed down to the states by this increasingly partisan institution, it's being received by a Republican Party that is not the Republican Party that you may remember from a couple decades ago. And so the folks that are in office there are really, really, really extreme. And I say that as a pretty not extreme person. It's really stark and clear. And at the same time, we have underinvested in the states. Amy McGrath and Jamie Harrison, who ran against Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham in 2020 for US Senate, raised and spent over $225 million. Both lost the races by more than 10 points. It's not to say they should not have run or that they were, not great candidates, but it's just a fundamental capital money misallocation when you look at the amount of money that gets spent in the states. There's $14 million that got spent on Michigan State House campaigns in 2020, where we're, it's actually changed a little bit. It's now down to 3 to flip. And so, it's not to say that like $1 more would have done this or done that, but there's just a relative to the actual policy and political power that is exercised by these offices. There's just a dramatic difference in where Democrats are putting their money, time, and attention. So that brings us to what can you do about it? The ship is sort of sailed at the federal government level. Don't expect the U.S. Senate to, disable the filibuster anytime soon. The U.S. House, it has, it's very unlikely that Democrats will make gains there. And the Supreme Court, obviously, lifetime appointments, and we have the administration they have. And so what we're really looking to is local and state action. We did a poll actually before the opinion came out, just a little informal poll of our community, which you think are folks who are paying attention to these things, and 55% of them of folks who responded said that they felt like they are unable to have an impact or don't even know where to start. And so that's a question that we kind of framed this discussion with, to say there's a couple of things you can do. And so we include ourselves, and there's other organizations that work at the legislative level too. They do a lot of great work to elect Democrats to state legislatures. Obviously we're on talking about our program today, but we think it's a really key and important part of the long-term solve for these issues. What's happened in the courts has pushed the rights down to these state legislatures and state governments. And so advocating for change there is a really direct, but not, it's a strategic investment. On the patient care front, the experts that we've spoken to have really emphasized the importance of donating locally, local Planned Parenthoods, National Network of Abortion Funds, Bridget Alliance, and there's also legal avenues in the courts to, like through the ACLU, that can offer some options as well. So really think the thing that we see here is that the route is not through the federal government. It can be satisfying to call your congressman or write a nasty grant, but the way that you're going to restore or protect laws that can protect access to care is through the legislative process, and that's through elections, and through making a difference at these state levels. It's through helping people who need access to care, advice, travel, funds, and coordination, and making that fight known in the courts. And that's a big change from how we have all, as a broader national community, thought about how to affect our politics. And so we think here that we are in the mood of taking it to the states. There is a law that passed sort of in a decision about Roe. There's some curious carve-outs, especially in Clarence Thomas, about the effect of this decision possibly down the line on same-sex marriage, contraception, interracial marriage, education, immigrants is a thing that's been popping up. Just today, there was a new decision that kind of kneecapped the EPA and its ability to regulate climate change. The Supreme Court announced that they are going to take up a case, I believe next term, that will look at the ability of states to even set even more power over their elections, which is basically a straight path to a coup, given the folks that are getting who are running in these races and have a real possibility of being elected if we don't all do this work. So it is not exaggerated to say that there's absolutely really invaluable help and assistance that can be rendered by non-political organizations with individuals to get access to care. And I'm sure Rep. Eskamani will touch on that when she joins. But the long-term protection of all these rights is in the States, and that's the direct work that we do. All the volunteers and all the programs that we run really go towards electing folks to state legislatures and getting folks to turn out. And there's a direct connection between the two. So going into how we play a role here, Democrats historically have not invested a lot in digital media. This has been changing the last couple of years, but through 2016 and 18, this number is from 2018, only 3 to 5 cents of every dollar that was spent for a Democratic campaign at the Senate, US Senate level went to digital media. And this is a thing throughout all campaigns, but it's especially true at the state legislative level. One of the funny things is when you buy television ads through like basically cities or really wide geographic areas. And if you're running for president or you're running for a statewide office, that's fine. You want to kind of reach everybody. But when you're running at the state legislative level, you want to really zoom in onto often a set of 3 or 4 or 5 zip codes that are where the voters that will make the difference in your election live. And that just doesn't match up with what folks have traditionally been able to do through broadcast and cable television. And so it's 12 times less efficient to do big TV buys when you're a state legislative candidate than it is to do something like Facebook or Google or other forms of digital advertising. It's just a simple thing about how tightly can you concentrate your outreach in order to reach the people that you actually that can actually vote for you. And so the historic underinvestment coupled with the especially large impact of these of this type of media in these races makes us very excited and confident about the impact that we're able to have. And so we started in 2017, kind of out of the 2016 election, seeing the gap in digital expertise, seeing what that 3 to 5 cents thing came from from tech entrepreneurs. And what we've run into today is an organization that vets, trains, organizes, and places skilled volunteers, almost more than 16,000 of them today, from folks like Google or from companies like Google or Netflix or ad agencies who have a lot of energy and want to be able to deliver to these campaigns. We do that alongside helping people vote by mail. We do it alongside messaging and targeting research, and a lot of internal analytics platforms that we use to help hundreds of campaigns do everything better. So it's been a large and exciting journey over time. We helped almost 500,000 people vote by mail in 2020, and more than 500 campaigns that we've helped with as well. And the really cool thing is that our Net Promoter Score, the measure of how happy our customers are, both it continues to be really high over time. Our customers being both campaigns and volunteers, as a measure of the quality and value of the work that we do. The key thing throughout all of our programs is that we have a really high component of talent. So being able to pull folks over from the commercial side to be able to deliver really high quality work at a very low cost and for hundreds of campaigns at once. A heavy focus on data and experimentation to make sure that we are actually measuring what works and doing more of that and less of the other stuff. And technology to make sure that we are not forgetting these lessons. One of the perennial problems in politics is that once the election's over, it's kind of like, well, that worked, or oh, no, it didn't. And we believe that you really should have a long-term focus on capturing all this data in order to make your programs better each and every year. If you're joining as a volunteer, we have a few main projects that we do: websites, digital ads, texting, and email marketing. Occasionally, there are software tools that help our internal infrastructure or help build data infrastructure for campaigns. Campaigns have a lot of different target outcomes that they come to us for, whether it's creating awareness of their campaign, fundraising, expanding their email list, just overall optimizing their brand and digital identity and getting out the vote. So we really run the full gamut of different things that campaigns need for their digital presence, and making sure that we deliver that in a highly professional manner, really high quality and very low cost. So just as an example of how that works, Senator Deandra Salvador in North Carolina had a team of 4 volunteers who came together through TFC to help build her website and flip her district and now become a successful incumbent there in North Carolina. So where are we doing it? We have 13 states that we're targeting for various purposes. A heavy number of them already have restrictions or abortion bans in place. Many of them are kind of on their way, unfortunately. Because of the gerrymandering cycle that we just went through, the real opportunities to make immediate change this year are going to be in Michigan, Minnesota, and New Hampshire, and a number of defense states. So folks are areas where Democrats have control and want to keep it through this year, and a number of areas where we need to strategically invest to not lose the thread, like Florida, even though the news may not be great in the next few months. So we've helped 67 campaigns this cycle to date, and expect that to clear north of 100 by the time we're done. Michigan, Minnesota have been really in a big focus here to date, but we're also ramping up work in Florida, Georgia, Pennsylvania, and a few others. So with that, Anna, you're there?
Hi, I'm here.
Welcome. I will do, I don't even know how to introduce you anymore.
Oh my God.
It says you're a bold and unapologetic fighter, so.
Undone.
Which I know to be true. But Anna is a state representative in the Orlando area that we have had the honor of working with for multiple cycles to flip her district originally and keep the momentum moving. As somebody that's been a reproductive rights advocate for, I think, basically your entire life. I think that's comfortable. It's comfortable saying. So I'm just very happy you're able to join us, and I have Amanda and Lauren from the team here as well, and we'll make it kind of a panel and folks in the audience. So
awesome.
We went through some of the basics of before you joined, of the sort of underinvestment in state legislatures over the past 15 years and kind of how we've gotten to where we are and what it's able to do going forward. And would love to kind of start with what your view on where we are and what we can do.
Yeah, I'd love to. So first of all, so much gratitude to Tech for Campaigns. I don't know if this was mentioned already, but I worked with Tech for Campaigns in my very first campaign when we flipped our seat from red to blue back in 2018 in Central Florida and kept it in 2020. And so for those who don't know me, again, my name is Anna Eskamani. My pronouns are she or hers, and I am proud to be the State House representative in the Central Florida area. For those familiar with the area, it encompasses the city of Orlando, Winter Park, Belle Isle, and Edgewood. And of course, we went through redistricting. So my district is a little bit different now, but includes now Edenville, the historic African-American community of Edenville, and Maitland. And before I ran for office, I worked at Planned Parenthood. So these issues are not only really personal for me, but as you mentioned, Greg, I come from the reproductive rights field. My first job out of college was at Planned Parenthood. I was a Planned Parenthood patient before then. When I was 18 years old, I went into a Planned Parenthood health center looking for access to contraception. My mom passed away when I was a kid, so I didn't have anyone to talk to about this kind of stuff, and walked into a health center, left with a method of birth control that was right for me, and realized how important it was for more young people to have this resource. That I started becoming a really strong advocate on my college campus, not only giving out free condoms, we called ourselves the condom commandos, but also advocating for abortion access and volunteering as a health center escort at my local Planned Parenthood when there were protesters outside. And then I was offered a job in 2012 and worked there for 6 years, becoming the Senior Director of Public Affairs and Communications across 22 counties, eventually running for office. And candidly, when I was running for office, a lot of Democrats did not think I was viable. They saw my work at Planned Parenthood as being a vulnerability. And of course, being a young woman of color in the district, which is a predominantly white district, Some of the more establishment Dems did not think I was the right fit, but Tech for Campaigns was always there. And like I said earlier, not only have we flipped our seat, but we've kept it, and we've delivered stellar constituent services. And in the face of this Roe decision, have been ready to respond. And the states do become the firewall for abortion rights in America. And it's really frustrating because I would say for the last 50 years since Roe was officially decided and since now overturned, the Democratic Party and a lot of these institutions were not focused on state ledge. And honestly, there's so much aggressive recruitment to carry state ledge elected officials into Congress with very little guarantee that they'll win, that we've actually lost some really strong Democrats in the Florida House because many organizations, come to the state House to find good candidates, which is the process of building a bench, but it's just hard to do that when you don't have a deeper bench that's established. So we've lost a lot of good Dems in Florida because they ran for Congress for these flip opportunities at a national level and didn't win. And it's also hurt our ability to raise money at a local level because, again, a lot of the attention goes to Congress. And so folks don't always realize just the value of state reps. And in the case of Florida and abortion access, I'll end on this point because I don't want to take up all the space, but Florida has a very strong right to privacy in our state constitution that has stopped past abortion restrictions from becoming law. And indeed, today in court, a judge has indicated that he will grant us a temporary injunction to stop the implementation of Florida's 15-week abortion ban, House Bill 5, which has no exception to rape, incest, or human trafficking. And that will be a long legal battle, but he cited this right to privacy. And this right to privacy was added by the voters in the 80s and has been under attack since then. I don't think folks realize that there's been a lot of state battles, before this one, where anti-abortion extremists were trying to eliminate our right to privacy or water it down. And we have been successful at a local level in pushing back. So local state officials have always been important, but I'm hopeful more people understand that now. And I know there's like this attitude nationally around a disappointment with congressional Democrats for an array of reasons, but we cannot let that translate to disenchantment with state Democrats, because especially in states like Florida, we are holding the line and we need all the support we can get because we don't always get it. And organizations like Tech for Campaigns help make sure that focus is not forgotten.
Thank you. Maybe Lauren or Amanda, if you have a question, but we earlier spoke about sort of three main avenues for action that is not futile. And there's a legal route, obviously, by supporting like a ACLU chapter, local Planned Parenthood chapters and other organizations, and then, campaign legislative advocacy. Do you agree with that framing? Is there anything else that you'd add?
Yeah, I would definitely add abortion funds. So abortion funds, are becoming more and more important. We have 5 funds in Florida that are state-based and others that do work in Florida. So we've been amplifying all of our abortion funds. We just held a large-scale rally and protest on Monday night in Orlando, had 4,000 people come out, and we co-hosted it with our local abortion fund. So really amplifying those voices is super important. And volunteering with abortion providers. Now, of course, Planned Parenthood is the most well-known abortion provider in the country, but believe it or not, there's a lot of independent providers that are not affiliated with Planned Parenthood. Oftentimes they're affiliated with the National Abortion Federation, but they're not necessarily that PP brand. And they don't always do political work, but they might need help with escorting because anti-abortion terrorism is on the rise right now. And we are seeing more protesting at health centers. And now that there's less health centers, there's going to be less targets for the same amount of protesters. So I really do encourage folks who want to be helpful, as you're insinuating with your question, tap into organizations doing the work. Tech for Campaigns is a good example of an organization doing the work on the ground. But I also want to plug in like groups like If, When, How. If, When, How is specifically for attorneys. So if you're an attorney or you have friends who are an attorney, If, When, How has a national lawyering network, and they help connect attorneys pro bono to minors who might need support navigating a judicial bypass, providing legal support for some of these smaller abortion providers who don't always have the same resources that a Planned Parenthood might. And so that's another fantastic organization. You have National Abortion Fund and groups that are serving as the liaison. I've seen some chatter online of folks who are volunteering their homes and things like that, or showing up at abortion clinics, ready to fight. And it's like, I love the passion, but there's already so many well-established organizations that you should tap into. And sometimes your passion can also unintentionally cause harm. For example, we saw a situation here in Florida where anti-abortion picketers are planning to protest outside a health center. And this health center is providing patient care that day. So someone created a Facebook event saying, let's bring our signs and our fireworks and let's, cause hell, this kind of stuff. And again, I love that enthusiasm, but if you're trying to access healthcare, maybe don't bring fireworks, right? And so talk to the folks on the ground who are the experts and who've also dealt with this before. So much, of course, this is unprecedented, but I remember in 2015, all of the anti-abortion zealots that were picketing Planned Parenthood health centers around the country. And it was a very intense moment of well-meaning people, but you got to get plugged in a way that is actually going to build power. It's not about you feeling good at that moment. It's about how are we building power long-term? And that does require campaign work as well. We hosted a virtual phone bank last night, calling voters in Orange County, asking them if they heard about SCOTUS and helping them understand that abortion is still legal in Florida, but not for long. And it won't be if we don't elect new leaders. And, we had a decent showing. We had 88 RSVPs and 40 people who attended. But I get frustrated, candidly, because we had 4,000 people at a protest. And it's like, come make calls, come knock on doors. We have all those avenues for you to get plugged in. But that translation is hard for people to go from protest to actual political change long term. And we're trying to, figure out that pathway through, but it also has to be folks who are self-motivated to do it. And peer-to-peer is a big way to get folks to show up. But that's part of our path to success is we can't just protest. We also have to help organize and reach out to people who didn't know about the protest, but once they hear about the state of abortion, might want to get more involved.
Thanks so much, Anna, and thank you so much for being here. It's so awesome to hear from you directly and wonderful to see a number of your constituents, I think, are here supporting you. So thank you. A question I had was just given a lot of what you've described, right, that in Florida, access to abortion is already fairly restricted and in jeopardy. We saw in one of Greg's previous slides that Florida is on the build infrastructure sort of end of the spectrum, and that its legislature is not one that we hope to flip or think that we can flip, I should say, right. This cycle. So I'm curious kind of what keeps you going and what keeps you feeling optimistic that change can happen in Florida?
It's about the gains. So I have to remind folks that change doesn't happen with a quick burst of energy or enthusiasm. Change happens with a consistent persistence for something greater than ourselves. And it's often in a zigzag, it's not linear. And anytime we experience backlash, that is a reaction to our hope becoming a reality. So in states like Florida and across America, we were very close to truly achieving equality for all and to building a country that fulfills its promise, that every person, no matter how much money you have, who you love, the color of your skin, who you worship, your disability status, maybe your documentation status, what an impact our humanity, that you could live a happy, healthy, and prosperous life of dignity. And because we were building towards that vision, those who are threatened by that shift, because it impacts their power, pushed back, and they pushed back hard. And that's the election of former President Trump. That's all the policies that came out of his administration. And it's the same in Florida with Governor DeSantis, who is basically Trump 2.0 and setting himself up to run for president of this country. So we must not surrender in the face of backlash. It's actually a sign that what we are doing is having an impact, and we have to keep going. But I mentioned the notion of gains. I think for me, it is discouraging when we have an election and we lose seats, we don't win seats, or we see voter turnout decrease or shift versus increase, because the success of states like Georgia has often been this daily grind and this meticulous data-driven effort to build power among multiple different communities all at once towards that common goal. And of course, the wins we've had in Georgia are fragile. You know, none of these wins are guaranteed. None of these wins are permanent. So you have to keep working. But like, I see the progress, you know, I see the progress in my own race where not only did we flip the seat, but we won by a larger margin in 2020. And we secured the support of 2 precincts that voted for Trump. And that's not because I'm, you know, mimic any of his policies. Like, I hate Trump, but it's because we deliver results. Like, we actually talk to folks, we knock on their doors, we see how they're doing, we listen to their concerns, and a lot of their concerns are economic related. So if we can address those areas, then we can build trust and we can help carry folks out of that extremism into a place of progress. So that's what gives me hope, is the fact that, like, I physically see the shift. And then I hear stories, you know, from folks that are kind of unexpected. You know, I was at AFL-CIO's Florida conventions. I spoke there Sunday morning after SCOTUS. And, you know, I was exhausted doing interviews at 8 a.m. and have not washed my hair in days. And so I, you know, walk into this room and I do my remarks. And as I'm leaving, this older gentleman approaches me, you know, big union guy. And he tells me about how his daughter saw the news of SCOTUS and like ran to him with her phone crying. And I thought that was such an important visual and such an important story, because it speaks to how this is an intergenerational moment. And you have kids, teenagers who are watching the news, who are upset by this, and not just sitting back and you know, not do anything, but they're activated. And they're also activating their elders around it. And I think that really speaks to how, when we talk about grassroots, like, it's not even just, you know, the door to door and like talking to everyday folks. There's grassroots movements that take place at the kitchen table, where, you know, one member of the family like sees this issue and inspires others to join them. And indeed, for the large scale rallies we've hosted since Friday, they're multi-generational, they're multi-class, they're multi-race, they're multicultural. And I think it just speaks to, again, this glimmer of hope, because people overwhelmingly do support abortion access. People overwhelmingly want to see one another succeed. And it's about tapping into that energy and directing it in a constructive way to build power long-term.
Thank you so much. That's really inspiring. I know we have a number of questions from the audience. Greg, did you want to tee a couple of those up?
Yeah, I'll summarize Michelle's question, which is the sort of when Chuck Schumer sends you a text message asking you to give, let's see how much that one said. Oh, there was no dollar asked, but it was a big picture of Chuck Schumer that I just got to my cell phone while we were on this call. As folks getting, and not trying to pick a fight, but like, as folks get kind of that type of outreach or hear that type of message and then feel like those, there's sort of this overall sense that things are working 30% less well than they should. How do you square that up to get people to still put in for the party at large, for continuing to work outside of what the immediate Anna zone is?
Yeah, I really appreciate this question. And I mean, I'm be real with y'all. I got some shit because I said on Twitter, Democrats should not be raising money right now. And I got shit for some Democrats who were doing that locally, and, you know, had that conversation with them of why I felt that way, because I do think it's very transactional. And I get it. Like, this is a crisis, and a crisis is an opportunity where people feel charged up to do something. But we as leaders need to build collective power, and we should not make it about ourselves. And so how did I use social media in our email tools? Well, we organized a Friday night emergency rally. We organized a Friday virtual emergency meeting. I used my email tools to invite people to those events. We had 400 people come out to our emergency virtual meeting, and 200 plus come out to our first rally on Friday. And then I mentioned on Monday, we hosted another rally. And of course, these events are live streamed, so we're using technology to invite other people to join us. And those events have calls to action. And I think it's so important, especially when you're talking about a healthcare issue, that you go beyond the politics. I mean, you do stress voting and the importance of voting and help folks understand that, but you can't be tone deaf. And I think raising money in the face of this unprecedented moment when Roe v. Wade is dismantled is a little tone deaf. When you look at this, the fact that national Democrats have dragged their feet on this, there's no way to sugarcoat that. The Hyde Amendment has been in the books since the 70s, and Democrats have been very shy to do anything about it. And that's one reason why the Biden administration has their hands tied. You know, folks have asked the Biden administration to help fund abortion and they can't. And because of the Hyde Amendment, right? And we're trying to find if there's, you know, loopholes to explore. But I mean, Congress has made this very difficult. And, you know, over the past 50 years, there's been Democratic majorities that didn't prioritize this issue. And in fact, abortion was the compromise tool. We saw that with the Affordable Care Act, where abortion access through the marketplace was a sticking point. And now in Florida, since we never built our own healthcare marketplace, when you buy health insurance on healthcare.gov, you have to purchase an abortion rider, which is kind of ridiculous because I don't ever think I might need an abortion when I'm buying a health insurance, right? But like Florida is following the federal government rules and separates it. So anyways, with that said, I really was embarrassed, honestly, that folks were doing that and try to model a different approach to building power. Building power is organized ideas, organized people, and organized resources. The resource piece is important, but I would argue that using this moment to organize ideas and people is priceless compared to whatever the dollar sign is you're trying to raise. And I can raise money any day of the year. I don't have to raise money the day that like we lost abortion access. Like, I don't know, I just feel like that's not the right moment to do it. And so with that said, you know, please support local candidates, absolutely, but also encourage them to make different asks. Like come out to a virtual meeting that we're doing where we're strategizing about abortion access in Florida. Join us for a phone bank, join us for a canvas. I just feel like there's other asks that candidates can use to build power where it's not always building your coffers. There's other opportunities to do that. And, you know, to that point, I'm not even asking for money right now and people are donating. And so I think when you walk the talk, you know, those positive results also show for themselves.
Sure. We have one question about sort of messaging and then a couple of Florida specific ones. So Ian asked about, is there a centralized organization or system so that each campaign's discoveries are shared, or is each campaign coming up with their own talking points, slogans, etc.? I will say that's part of the work that we do is trying to slowly retain, not slowly, but incrementally retain knowledge of what's working and what people are saying across different states and different districts, and trying to run tests across different things and do all that research. But I will say that Anna's probably about to say, not really.
Well, I have some other, no, I mean, this is an important question. So yeah, first of all, messaging does need to be customizable and localized because every community might have a different vibe. But what I will say is values need to be consistent. And in this, specifically in the face of abortion, we have many shared values that draw us to support abortion access, including love and commitment to freedom, including respect of privacy, family, deciding when to parent, when not to parent is a very personal decision, and it reflects our values to trust people to make those decisions. And so there are some shared values like dignity that I think we really should integrate into our messaging with abortion, because it helps us connect with folks who might be different politically, but we connect on values. Now, there are also organizations who help with the streamlining of messaging. In particular, with state lawmakers, we have organizations like SIX, and SIX stands for the State Legislative Exchange, essentially. And so they help us in streamlining policy ideas, messaging ideas. They have a reproductive health cohort within their work as well. And there's so many other organizations like Future Now that has an entire policy bank Like it's basically like a online library of bill ideas for a more prosperous, progressive future that we can tap into. But I also take this responsibility seriously for abortion, and I host trainings with all the lawmakers on the Democratic side, multiple trainings every legislative session on abortion, on tax issues. I invite special guests, local and national, to talk about these issues. And I have hosted messaging trainings to the greater public, because I think it is important that, you know, elected officials have the best messaging, but you are also our liaisons. You are influencers in your networks, whether it's in person or digital or both. And I actually have on my to-do list right now to put together a virtual training to help folks understand the abortion fights in Florida and how do we talk about abortion in an effective way. And then what's the action? What's the call to action? So we try to also model that type of teaching, because if not, I cannot blame people for using the wrong messaging. If no one's helping you use the best messaging, then that's on us.
Yeah. So we got a grab bag. We're going to do lightning round. Melissa asks, anti-choice or pro-life?
I don't use either. So I don't use either. Yeah. When you're talking about abortion access, you should refer to those who oppose abortion as anti-abortion extremists, and because that's what they are. And then when I talk about support of abortion, I'll say pro-reproductive health. I will also refer to abortion as a personal medical decision between that person, their family, their doctor, and their faith, and not politicians. So labels are not ideal, because majority of Americans support abortion access, but does not mean they define themselves by these labels that have been politically convenient for some. So I actually would challenge the use of any labels.
And then just real quick about intergroups solidarity across Florida. Is the privacy amendment enough? Do you need something else? DeSantis, any last Florida questions?
Okay. So Florida's privacy amendment, we don't know yet, Jim, if it will be enough. We're finding that out right now. There are offline conversations taking place in Florida and in other states to do a constitutional ballot amendment that is focused on abortion, which the voters would have to approve. So those conversations are happening, but they're premature, as that would be a 2024 action, not a 2022. When it comes to intergroups of solidarity, so it's very much the organizer or the organizers' responsibilities to build intersectional spaces. So I mentioned the events that we hosted for abortion access. I'm very intentional on who is invited to be a part of that platform. I mean, I cast a really wide net of people who are available, but I am focused on like BIPOC voices and focused on people of different religious backgrounds, on the LGBTQ+ community, because I know that people who are speaking in your program, or people who are part of your campaign or part of your organization, reflect who follows them and who shows up into the space. If you have a program that's only, you know, folks of one demographic, it does impact who shows up to that event. And so I think it's really important. Now, of course, some folks that are intentionally congregating for a reason. But I know as a lawmaker, like, I take my responsibility really seriously to create an inclusive space that's welcoming to all, that attracts diverse populations and communities. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you are modeling that in your friend network and your power building tactics, that you're also using your privilege to invite new faces in. And I'm so proud to say that, you know, many of the actions and events we posted, people who have spoken, it's their first time ever speaking publicly about abortion. And that's because we're not leaning on the same familiar faces. We're diversifying who our speakers are. We're diversifying what the asks are. And that reflects in the solidarity that presents itself. And then you have to maintain those relationships. You can't just be transactional. You have to be transformational. And so check in on those folks, invite them back, ask what I can do for you, right? Don't be the one that's only asking them for something you need. Ask them what they need. Like, build these relationships, and that will help establish the solidarity that we need to not only survive, but to lead on real and meaningful long-term progress, because there is no easy fix, y'all. Like, this was 50 years of anti-abortion and Republican, meticulous, insidious, well-funded campaigning, there is no easy fix to restore this. We have a long fight ahead of us, and we need each other. And so please be kind, be resilient, and be brave in the face of what is a fascist, oppressive government before us, to really build one that reflects the American dream.
With that, thank you so much for joining. A lot of love in the chat for your remarks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
appreciate
for
y'all.
joining. Before we go, Lauren's going to talk about how you can all put this into action.
Yes, I mean, I don't know about you all, but I'm feeling more fired up and optimistic than I have in a long time. Thank you, Anna, so much. So let's put this energy to work. If you're not yet a volunteer, please join us. We have a ton of projects. I think we've got 6 active right now, another 8 coming online next week, and a whole bunch right after that. So bring your friends. It's more fun with friends. We're always looking for more folks, new people. Couple key links there that Amanda's throwing into the chat. And then we also have a couple staff positions open as well. So you can learn more about those roles there. Thank you all for coming. Thank you again, Anna, so much for joining us. Hope you all have a good evening. I think we're done here.
Thank you all so much. We'll see you next time.